Today I'm making an urgent call for safer road behaviours across South Australia. This year we have lost 17 lives on our roads, and 9 of those have involved vulnerable people or vehicles. These vulnerable road users have low or no protection when involved in a crash and can also be less visible on the roads to other vehicles. It is a concern to see these vulnerable road users emerging as overrepresented category this year, and we're asking those people to take extra care on our roads and drivers to be extra vigilant around those road users. The South Australia Police 2024 traffic statistics have now been finalised. 91 lives were lost on our roads and 847 people were left with serious injuries. The majority of lives lost on our roads were in country areas, and the majority of serious injuries occurred in the metropolitan area. Almost 1/3 of people who lost their lives on our roads were 70 years and above. Young drivers were also overrepresented, with young people under 24 years, with 14 people losing their lives and 186 sustaining serious injuries. Distraction and dangerous driving were the leading factors in our lives lost last year. Distraction, drug driving and speeding were the leading factors involved in last year's serious injury crashes. Serious road trauma often involves one or more of the fatal 5 factors, significantly increasing your risk of being involved in a crash. Tragically, this means that almost all lives lost and serious injuries could have been prevented through safer road behaviours. With distraction, dangerous driving and speeding playing a major role in so many crashes last year, the critical message to drivers and road users across South Australia is that these selfish behaviours have to stop. We are pleading with people to stay focused and drive to the conditions on our roads so everyone can arrive safely. South Australian Police will continue to strong action to deter and detect unsafe road behaviours and through road safety education and enforcement statewide. However, it is essential that people understand making smart and safe choices on our roads will prevent crashes and will save lives. Thank you.
Well, can I thank Inspector Burns for having us here at SAPOL headquarters this morning to reinforce the message to all South Australians, and particularly motorists, that they've got to do a better job behind the wheel to stay safe, particularly during this festival season. We have had a significant increase on the number of fatalities this time this year compared to the same time last year. And as Inspector Burns said, this is being largely reflected by fatalities involving vulnerable road users, whether it's pedestrians, cyclists, motorcyclists. They are becoming overrepresented in these fatality statistics, and it reinforces the message that all of us have a responsibility when it comes to road safety, and the shocking images that we've just seen of the inattention and distraction for some South Australian motorists just goes to show that we've got to reinforce the message to all South Australian motorists that they've got to do a much better job being safe when they're behind the wheel. We have the busiest period of our state in these coming weeks with the festival season. There will be hundreds of thousands of more South Australians, as well as visitors to South Australia, out on our roads or around our road-related areas. And it is absolutely essential that South Australians pay closer attention to the conditions around them, make sure that they're driving safely, and not only do they not get inattentive or distracted behind the wheel, but there is no speeding, there is no reckless driving, no use of alcohol or drugs to make sure that we can try and bring these statistics down. Happy to take some questions about this or anything else.
Just in terms of the phone safety, driver distraction cameras, 34,500 drivers have been caught since last September. Do you think they're having any impact, though? We can see that people are still distracted, still dying on our roads. What impact are these cameras actually having?
Look, I would like to think that they're having an impact. I mean, I think everyone was deeply shocked by the prevalence of mobile phone use while people are driving. And it's not just people using them when they're stationary, for example, at traffic lights. It's people using them while their car is in motion. And nothing could be more dangerous behind the wheel. You are effectively driving blindfolded if you are paying attention to your phone rather than paying attention to the road. And that massively increases the chance of becoming involved in a crash and causing a fatality or a serious injury on our roads. So we have seen a huge number of people be fined from these new fixed mobile phone detection cameras. But my understanding is we're starting to see the trend of the number of fines being issued per week, thankfully, starting to trend down. But these pictures show we've still got a long way to go getting the message through to all South Australian motorists that they've simply got to be safer when they're behind the wheel. And particularly these statistics that 9 of the 17 fatalities have involved vulnerable road users. We've clearly got to get the message out that while drivers absolutely have to be safer behind the wheel, for pedestrians, cyclists and other vulnerable road users, everybody has got a role to play when it comes to being safe on or around our roads.
Are there more cameras in the works?
We haven't got more cameras in the works now, but we'll be continuing our discussions with the Police Commissioner and with SAPOL about whether that's something that might be necessary into the future. I mean, I just can't tell you how deeply shocked I think most South Australians have been, and in particular the government has been, by the prevalence of people driving while they're looking at their mobile phone camera. As I said before, you may as well drive blindfolded if you're looking at a mobile phone rather than paying attention to the road when you're behind the wheel. It's difficult to think of few more dangerous behaviours behind the wheel than looking at your mobile phone. So these cameras have been very effective in highlighting the issue to South Australians and to punishing those South Australians who are choosing to do the wrong thing when they're behind the wheel. If we need to consider rolling more of these out or taking other measures, then that is something that we'll consider along with SAPOL in the coming months.
Do you have any information about the accuracy of the cameras? How are they going to how many people are able to successfully film?
Yeah, I don't have particular statistics, Catherine, but I'm aware, of course, as people do for red light traffic infringements or speeding infringements, that there is always a cohort of drivers who will question the validity of the fine and of the offence that they're being picked up for. So I expect that to be the same here, but as we've heard before, there have been tens of thousands of these fines that have been issued, including being paid, and that just goes to show how prevalent it is out on the roads.
How many people are actually paying for their fines here?
I don't think we've got a particularly high default rate compared to what we would see for other fines that are levied on the community, but I'll see if I can get you some statistics for that.
And just another one,
Sure.
We're talking about more cameras potentially in the future. I know, noticeably there wasn't really any in the east in the initial rollout. Is that likely to happen in the future?
Look, I think we would base our decisions on whether there are more cameras, and if there are to be more cameras, where they would go. We'll base those decisions on the advice of SAPOL. Yes, certainly. I mean, my electorate is in the western suburbs. I represent a significant portion of the western suburbs community. And we've seen how prevalent these fines are, unfortunately, because so many motorists have been doing the wrong thing, looking at their mobile phones. Whether it's in the east or in other parts of Adelaide, we'll talk to the Commissioner about whether we need more of these cameras, and if so, where they go.
What's the government doing in terms of our regional road users? They're obviously overrepresented. Is there something that the government's doing to help with that?
Yeah, so I've handed down 3 state budgets now, including 3 mid-year budget updates, and the last 3 of those budget documents, 2 state budgets and a mid-year update, we've had significant road safety packages in each of those 3. And that is a recognition that we have to continue dialling up our efforts as a community to combat these sorts of statistics, and in the regions that's been the case. So there's been more money allocated for road safety initiatives out in our regions, whether that's intersection upgrades, whether that's road maintenance, whether that's the installation of safety barriers, what's called audio tactile line marking, that line marking that makes a noise should your tyres go over it. We've been funding more of that to be rolled out in regional South Australia, in particular in areas where we feel that there's potentially a higher risk of crashes happening in the future to try and combat what's going on out in our regional roads.
What do you do for the people who simply continue to do the wrong thing? And we know with even these mobile phone fines that they're continuing to do the wrong thing. I mean, how do you stop someone from driving dangerously if they're going to continue to do it anyway?
Well, you've got to get them off the road. That's why we have a demerit point system, is for people who continue to flout the law, continue to do the wrong thing and to put their own lives and the lives of other South Australians at risk. They'll be taken off the roads. Their driver's licence will be taken away. And of course, as we've seen in other areas of road safety enforcement, for example, with hoon driving, dangerous driving, driving at very high speeds, cars can be impounded. We simply have to continue dialing up the ways in which we tackle this road safety issue out on our roads to make sure that we can keep South Australians safe. It's not just about targeting bad driving behaviour, although of course that is essential, and in order to try and combat the behaviour of this group of drivers that continues to do the wrong thing. You know, our motivation is also to protect the community and to keep the rest of South Australians who are using our roads or who might be around our roads safe. That is why stepping up these efforts is absolutely essential so that we can better protect the community.
And how does the timing of this, obviously today, this press conference with the fringe and keeping people safe?
Well, as I said in my remarks, this is the really busy time for South Australian roads. We've got a huge number of visitors to our state for a prolonged period of time, particularly around those fringe hotspots that we're all used to, whether it's down the east end of Adelaide or in other venues around metropolitan Adelaide or regional South Australia. There will be many thousands of people out on our roads, whether they're driving, whether they're walking, they might be cycling, for example. And it's absolutely essential at this time that we reinforce the message that we haven't had the best start to the year by any stretch when it comes to these statistics. And all South Australians have got a responsibility when it comes to road safety, particularly those behind the wheel, but also those people who find themselves in a road-related area. They've got to be aware, they've got to take those necessary actions to keep themselves and other people around them safe. We can't have these shocking images of driver distraction and inattention continuing to put lives at risk on South Australian roads.
Superintendent Burns. Thanks. Just some clarity surrounding the rules in terms of driver distraction. Obviously, we're not allowed to use our mobile phones. There are a few images there of someone eating a kebab or a burger. What are the rules about eating, for example, and driving? Okay,
so every time you're behind the wheel, you need to take due care while you're driving. And that includes having both hands free to do what you need to do to drive your car. In these images, yes, we've seen people with drinks, kebabs, etc. They wouldn't be expiated for using their mobile phone, obviously, while driving. But in other circumstances, if they're seen by a police officer and seen to be not driving with due care, then they can be charged with a range of offences.
I think there's still, for some people, some confusion around using your mobile phone when you're driving. I mean, you can accept a call and that sort of thing if it's in a bracket, can't you?
Correct. So if your phone's in an approved cradle in your car, you can use use your hand to accept that call or use Bluetooth. You cannot text, you cannot use social media, you cannot do a video call, etc. And you cannot use your phone if it is not in that approved cradle, unless it's through a Bluetooth and where you do not need to touch that phone.
So what's your message to people in terms of general behaviour behind the wheel? Are they allowed to take a bite of a hamburger while they're driving? Again, it depends on the circumstances, but you need to make sure that you're driving with due care and that you're not distracted by that behaviour. So we see a range of distraction can be many things. So it can be using your mobile phone, it could be turning around to talk to the kids in the back to stop them fighting, to turning to talk to someone in the passenger seat. You need to make sure that whatever behaviours you're undertaking are safe in that situation. If you're at the traffic lights and you need to turn around to talk to your children, then that's deemed to be safe. However, if you're driving on a 110 kilometre road and you turn around to talk to your children, then of course you're taking your eyes off the road while you're travelling at a very fast speed. That is an unsafe behaviour. How disheartening is it for you to see these images? You would see some horrors on our roads. How shocking is it when you can see what that behaviour can potentially lead to? Yeah, it's very disheartening, and it's tragic to see the outcome from such a small act that people think will not have an impact. We see
tragedy on our roads, first responders who have to attend to those crashes, members of the public that might come across those crashes, then have to live with the images that they've seen, all through selfish behaviour where people do not do what is right for themselves and for other people around them. They're simply not thinking about what might happen, and we can see clearly through the high lives lost this year what can happen through those distracted behaviours.
And what's police's plan in terms of the fringe season? Are you planning to have more patrols in those fringe hotspots to deter or prevent people from driving distracted, drink driving, etc.?
So when there's a major operation, yes, extra police are put on into those areas to ensure the safety of patrons and ensure we're detecting any offences in those areas. So yes, that will be occurring.
Sorry, just going back to the question about the hamburger. So you could fine someone if they're driving with a hamburger?
It wouldn't be a fine. So there's an offence called due care, which you could be reported for. Yeah, and again, it would depend on the circumstances of that.
So if you pull up the lights, you might be lenient, but if they're doing it while they're driving on a 100k
Well,
road...
yeah, if they're doing it while driving on a 100k road while having a drink in the other hand or something like that, or driving with their knees or something like that, obviously that all contributes to the offence.
And can you make any comment on the significance of the dig for the Beaumont children?
I haven't been briefed on that, and I'm not here to comment about that, no.
And do you have any updates on the crash at Stockyard Plain yesterday?
So yesterday there was a crash at about 10:10 yesterday morning at Stockyard Plain. A driver of a Honda, a 24-year-old male from Oakden, was in the right of two overtaking lanes and has drifted onto the incorrect side of the road and had a head-on collision with another motorist. That driver is in hospital with serious injuries, and 3 other people taken to hospital with injuries from that. That's the only update I have. Major Crash was still investigating that.